Damian Lillard has requested a trade, so we'll likely see another big three, a trio of NBA All-Stars, emerge this offseason. But does that method of team building actually work? Watch until the end for the undisputable answer. But first, what do we mean by a trio? What is a big three? The term Big Three really started becoming commonplace around 2010 when LeBron James announced to the world that he was taking his talents to South Beach, joining Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh on the Miami Heat. Part of the reason they did this was to combat the Boston Celtics' own Big Three of Kevin Garnett, Ray Allen, and Paul Pierce. A Big Three formed in 2007 through trades rather than player-driven free agency. But the concept of a Big Three isn't all that new. Way back in the 1980s, two teams dominated: Magic Johnson's Lakers and Larry Bird's Celtics. Magic was flanked with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and James Worthy, three #1 picks on the same team. Larry had Kevin McHale and Robert Parrish, forming the toughest front court in NBA history. A decade later, the Bulls got Dennis Rodman from the Spurs to join Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen, three NBA players and all-world defensive players who had each won several titles before their team-up in 1995. The Spurs owned 2 straight decades of basketball, making the playoffs every single year they employed their Big Three of Tim Duncan, Tony Parker, and Manu Ginobili. But the real concept of a Big Three as we know it truly began with LeBron James's infamous 2010 decision. It began the era of player empowerment, when teams put all of their chips into 3 stars in the hopes of guaranteeing a title. So we'll define a Big Three like this: 3 players in their prime who were certified stars on their own team, who, through forced trades or free agency, decided to team up in the wake of Miami Heat's groundbreaking team. When the Heat formed, LeBron famously said they won't win 4, 5, or 6 titles.
LeBron, tell us about that.
Not 2, not 3, not 4, not 5, not 6, not 7.
He and Bosh signed 6-year contracts with a 4th-year opt-out following the sign-and trades that brought them there. After the 4th season of the Heatles, LeBron was gone with 5 fewer titles than promised. Even so, that team, the first true Big Three super team all-star trio, might have been the most successful. The Heat went to 4 straight finals, something no team had done since the 1984-1987 Celtics. After a monumental upset by the Mavs in 2011, the Heat won in 2012 and 2013. None of the super teams since then have come anywhere close to that. The year after LeBron went to Miami, Carmelo Anthony and Chauncey Billups were shipped to New York to join Amari Stoudemire, who had just signed with the Knicks as one of the consolation prizes of a loaded 2010 free agency. 3 All-NBA guys who were coming off great seasons. Of course, it never panned out for the Knicks. Amari went from an MVP candidate in the first half of the season to suffering through injuries for the rest of his career. Chauncey aged quickly, adding little to the Knicks and leaving the following summer to the Clippers. Melo had a nice Knicks career, but the team never won anything. The Knicks had put all their chips on one older player and 2 guys who both need the ball to impact the game in any way. After an incredible start to the season for a franchise that had been looking for a title for decades, they finished 42-40, only 1 playoff series in Melo's time there, and didn't make the playoffs after 2013. Meanwhile, they had no role players because they gutted their team for Melo. So while the Knicks struggled, the Nuggets overachieved and became a solid playoff team. Around the same time, the New Jersey Nets were building a super team of their own. They paid a high price for Deron Williams in the same 2010-2011 season, trading away Youngstown and draft capital. After the 2012 season, they picked up Joe Johnson, the Hawks all-star who led them to mild success. They already had Brook Lopez, a high-post scoring machine. Like the Knicks across town, they were a disappointment. They missed the playoffs in 2011 and 2012, then were bounced out of the first round in the 2013 playoffs. They doubled down on their super team hopes that offseason, trading away more draft capital and more young players for Paul Pierce and Kevin Garnett, 2 aging stars. They were stuck with a center who couldn't rebound and forced former superstars who were suddenly past their primes, including Deron Williams, who was supposed to be the centerpiece of this team, who was suddenly washed up before he hit 30. Meanwhile, the pieces they traded away became Enes Kanter, Derek Favors, Jaylen Brown, Colin Sexton, and Markelle Fultz, which could have been Jason Tatum. And then, at the end of the 2010s, there was a total lack of parity. The Golden State Warriors and the Cleveland Cavaliers were in 4 straight finals. The Warriors was an interesting one. They had the big three of their own in Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, and Draymond Green, all drafted by Golden State. But in 2016, they added Kevin Durant because of the salary cap spike, completely shutting down the possibility of anyone else winning the title for a couple of years. Meanwhile, the Cavs had sneakily built up the second best manufactured big three of the decade. During LeBron's stint in Miami, they were able to get to 3 #1 picks in 4 years, showing just how bad they were without the king. One of those picks was Kyrie Irving, who was an all-star by the time LeBron returned in the summer of 2014. Another of those picks was Andrew Wiggins, who they'd sent to Minnesota for All-NBA forward Kevin Love. Kyrie was a dose of instant offense. Love was the team's best rebounder and a knockdown three-point shooter, and LeBron is, well, LeBron, able to make every single role player on the team better. Since then, the idea of team building has shifted a little, but there are always a few teams trying their luck with an ill-advised big three. Just look back to the Nets. Kyrie and Kevin Durant, 2 good friends, wanted to join forces on the Nets. They forced Brooklyn to grab DeAndre Jordan, a former All-NBA guy from the Clippers, to complete the trio. When Jordan proved himself to be washed up, they recruited James Harden, Durant's old buddy from the Thunder. When Kyrie's insanity bothered Harden a little too much, he forced his way out, leading to the Ben Simmons acquisition. And we all know how that's turning out. In the 4 years of the Nets' Big Three, they won a total of 1 playoff series. Yet another disappointing trio with nothing to show for a lot of money spent. So, what went wrong with those teams? To answer that question, we have to talk about what went right with all of the successful Big Threes. The Lakers and the Celtics of the 1980s are completely impossible to recreate today. First off, there aren't enough dumb GMs for something like that. We won't get into it here, but those acquisitions were basically highway robberies staged by 2 franchises who were just far smarter than the rest. On top of that, there's too much parity in salary. Back then, you could afford a few stars and still be able to play for depth as well. Now, if a team tried to pay Kevin McHale, Larry Bird, and Robert Parrish, 3 of the top 15 guys in the league, that team wouldn't be able to afford a solid bench. That's what happened to the Knicks when they gave away guys like Wilson Chandler and Danilo Gallinari in the Melo trade. Suddenly, they only had 3 good players on the court on any given day. When one got old and the other got hurt, their title chances went right out the window. When you look what went right with the Miami Heat, it's a little more nuanced. The players they decided to go all in on just worked together. They were well-rounded players who could score, pass, handle, and defend across positions. They are really to credit with the small ball positionless game. Other times, like the Kyrie, KD, Harden trio, teams just look at individual accolades and try to mush 3 stars together. But this isn't fantasy basketball. There are more important things than just stats to consider. But the most important thing in team building is also the most underrated: chemistry and consistency. The Spurs won all those titles with their Manu Parker-Timmy trio because they had played together for so long. They grew together, lost together, and improved together. The same can be said for the Warriors, who drafted 3 talented players and developed them into stars. Only after they had become great, they added KD to become unstoppable. In 2021, the Bucks had a mini-3 of Giannis, Chris Middleton, and Drew Holiday. They matched up against Chris Paul, Devin Booker, and DeAndre Ayton, a better team in the finals. Giannis and Chris, along with several important role players, had played together for years. They were battle-tested. Chris Paul had just joined the Suns, and when the going got tough, the team with more consistency prevailed. If a team is going to succeed, they need a star. Teams don't win without a superstar caliber player. Beside him, they need a strong number 2 with a little history with the star. Beyond that, it's better to have several good players than one more great player. It's a team sport. 5 guys are on the court. It's not a 3-man league. Of course, there are exceptions, as there always are. Just take the 2020 Lakers as an example. But when Nikola Jokic, Jamal Murray, and a group of role players dominated the 2023 playoffs, they proved that this method of consistency and team building continues to be the way to go. Just this offseason, several teams have created big threes with hopes of big successes. Everything about the Phoenix trade for Beal looks bad. 3 guys who need the ball in their hands, 2 of whom can't play full seasons anymore. They fell into the Nets' trap of just getting as many all-stars in the building as possible without worrying about fit or role players. The Celtics nabbed Porzingis for Marcus Smart. They already have two bona fide stars who have played in several conference finals together, as well as a deep, deep bench. If history tells us anything, that team is poised to be good next season. Other big threes to watch out for this year are Butler, Bam, and the pending Dame Time trade to Miami, who will make Heat culture the top favorites for a repeat to the NBA Finals. In Golden State, the Warriors have added Chris Paul to their established core. His age might hinder them, but he's also a winning player who can likely fit their culture, if not their style of play. The Knicks, Lakers, Kings, and Grizzlies all currently have two stars on their team. They should look to develop the guys they have rather than go all in on a third high-paid guy. But in a superstar league, teams will keep making that mistake. But the team to beat will be the Nuggets. Like Giannis's Bucks, Steph's Warriors, Kawhi's Raptors, Duncan's Spurs, and the majority of all great teams out there, they focused on team building right, consistency around their star. What do you think? Do you think the era of big threes will continue? Do you think teams will learn that a team needs more than just three superstars? Let us know in the comments. Thanks for watching Hooper's Lane. For more NBA content, check out The Wrong Opinion, useless NBA trivia, and garbage rankings wherever you get your podcasts.